It's a great honor for me to be here and learn from all of you. I'm truly humbled. I'm honored to be the first Iranian American judge in San Diego Superior Court in California. I came to the US as a refugee from Iran at the age of 20. Like my colleague, Judge Kilani, I'm also well aware of the evils of imperialism that destroyed my country of birth and feel great empathy for all victims of imperialism and colonialism. I would like to take a moment and thank our brilliant speakers for their discussions of the two very important topics on colonialism and neocolonialism, and how we need to continue to work together in order to find a just and equitable solution to address the continued harm to colonized nations and indigenous cultures. Professor Samuel N. Tusu, I apologize, told us about how colonialism and neocolonialism in the name of justice and common good continue exploitation of natural resources in Ghana, and how this needs to be reversed in order to ensure equity in development. I think we all agree that the harm that is done to the environment and the past harm in cultural and spiritual level could never be reversed completely despite all the efforts. But stopping the future harm and reversing some of the unjust practices becomes extremely important. As Professor told us, the decolonization of Ghana only occurred at the political and not an economic level. The laws of Ghana were never changed to hand over resources to chiefs and traditional rulers, and the continuous involvement of institutions such as IMF and World Bank and other financial institutions in decision-making involving mining seem to work against issues of justice and common good. Thank you, Professor, for bringing awareness to this important topic. And we hope that some of these practices are reversed, bringing true equity and justice to Ghana and other previously colonized nations and people. In the US, in some of the states, including the state of California, where I'm from, our governor has started efforts in returning to the tribes some of the land that belonged to the Native Americans that was forcefully and unjustly taken from them. Also, in January 2022, 500 acres of redwood forests in Northern California were purchased for $3.5 million by a nonprofit environmental group called Save the Redwoods League, and was returned to 10 different native tribes in California who care about preserving the forest. These isolated acts alone will never undo the harm that was done to the tribes and to the environment, but it is an equitable move in the right direction. It's not just the protection of the land that matters, it's also the restoration of the property to descendants of its original inhabitants, which also holds great cultural significance for the tribes. We also have to heal some of the psychological and cultural damage that was done to indigenous populations for generations to come. We will still have a lot of work to do. And as Professor De Sousa Santos put it perfectly, we must first and foremost decolonize ourselves, and then bring the victims to the table to be part of the decision-making and finding solutions. This afternoon, we also heard from Professor Eric Blumenson, who told us how the universal justice and indigenous reconciliation mechanisms collide, and told us about anti-colonial direction of the International Criminal Court. Africa, Latin America, and Caribbean share a common history of slavery and colonialism in the hands of nations generally referred to as the West. As you might know, in 1998, ICC was established to ensure that war crimes and crimes against humanity do not go unpunished. The International Criminal Court was created as an impartial system of justice to mainly address human rights violations in the world. The Rome Statute's preamble says to put an end to impunity for perpetrators of those crimes and thus contribute to the prevention of these crimes. The Puerto Rican social scientist, Ramon Grospugo, whom I had the great honor of meeting last night and is sitting right across from me today, has characterized this international system of justice as hierarchical, capitalist, Christian-centric, patriarchal, colonial, modern, Western, and Eurocentric. This matter of whether ICC is colonial is a particular interest in South Africa. Mia Swart says that this issue has been a burning issue nationally, as South Africans are deeply concerned over how many of the institutions within their country are deeply colonial. The system of justice is also described by others to being politically correct, carefully avoiding power politics by navigating around the world's superpowers and their allies. And we are all familiar with the stance that the prior US administration took against ICC by threatening sanctions against any nation supporting the court against the US and its allies for its investigation into allegations of war crimes committed in Afghanistan. Also, the countries considered superpowers such as US, Russia, China are not signatories to Rome Statute, and court does not have jurisdiction over them. And the court also lacks true enforcement power. In the past years, majority of cases brought before the court are from the African nations who are signatories. And this has also raised a lot of criticism, particularly because many of the judges at ICC are from former colonial powers, and the court is located at Hague, Netherlands, which is a former colonial power itself. Also, several countries in recent years have withdrawn from ICC when their leaders were brought before the court. Other nations are also withdrawing or have started to withdraw withdrawal process by citing continued colonialism as the basis for their withdrawals. I think we are all in agreement that much work needs to be done to increase the credibility of the International Criminal Court of Justice, particularly now that the court faces more criticism and turmoil than ever. Professor Blumenson raises an important point that the International Court could provide assistance that strengthens the state's capacity to provide justice through its own institutions. And the more states are empowered to do justice themselves, the less court would be subject to complaints about ethnocentric bias itself. And thank you for your attention and your time.